The idea of the multiverse has recently become very prevalent in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Both the Ant-Man movies and Avengers Infinity War have touched upon the concept in different ways. What with the quantum realm playing a big part in the former and alternate timelines being mentioned in the latter. And it's expected to play a huge part in this year's Avengers Endgame. However, the multiverse was actually introduced much earlier than any of those movies, in the first two movies of the Thor trilogy. Want to know more? Well then, by Odin's beard, watch this video and we'll tell ya. Yep, that's right. It was the Thor trilogy that secretly introduced the idea of the multiverse into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, long before it became an extremely important factor in the Ant-Man and Avengers movies. In both Phase 2 and Phase 3 of the MCU, Marvel Studios has blatantly grown increasingly interested in the concept of the multiverse. If you're not familiar with the concept, let us quickly explain it. It's a theory grounded in real-world science that essentially has two strands to it. First of all, it covers the idea that history branches out, creating alternate timelines, such as the Mirror Universe in Star Trek, the universe in which Biff Tannen is the most famous man in America in Back to the Future 2, and the universe in which Willow Rosenberg is a vampire in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But it also puts forward the idea that, while we are three-dimensional beings, there are other planes of existence whose physics operate in very different ways to what we're used to. So far in the MCU, the franchise has predominantly been interested in the latter, which explains both the quantum realm in the Ant-Man movie and the Dark Dimension in Doctor Strange. But the franchise has actually been building up to the idea for quite some time. In fact, the first reference to the multiverse came almost 8 years ago in 2011's Thor. You may remember the movie's post-credits scene when Stellan Skarsgård's Erik Selvig was talking to Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury in a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility. During the exchange, Selvig described the Bifrost as a gateway to another dimension, which seems to suggest that Marvel Studios originally intended for each of the 9 realms to be in a different plane of existence in the MCU. Of course, that idea was subsequently and inconspicuously dropped, presumably with the retconned explanation being that Selvig was simply mistaken about the whole thing. But if you look a little deeper and closer, you'll actually see that the Thor trilogy did indeed lay the foundations for the idea of the multiverse in the MCU. It just did so in an extremely subtle and admittedly very smart way. So how exactly did they do it? How did the MCU build up the quantum realm and beyond all those movies ago? Well, it did so like this. There was a key scene in 2014's Thor: The Dark World in which the aforementioned Selvig, a renowned and respected astrophysicist, was jotting notes on a chalkboard, seemingly in an insane fashion, while he was consigned to a mental institution as a result of Loki's mind-controlling exploits in the first Avengers movie. It's a scene we can all look back at fondly, not least because it involved a much-loved cameo from the late, great Stan Lee.
Can I have my shoe back?
But also because the notes on the board are actually very interesting. While they're easy to brush off as gobbledygook due to Selvig's predicament at the time of writing them, the fact that some of those notes are lifted from real-world science gives them real credibility. Mixed in with theories about quantum mechanics, we can also see some notes that are specific to Marvel's comic book universe. And importantly, as far as this video is concerned, a number of them point towards a multiverse. Perhaps most interestingly, there was a reference to the 616 universe. Now in the comic book, 616 is the traditional designation given to the original, standard Marvel universe to distinguish it from all other realities. There was also a reference to the nexus of all realities, which could definitely become important in the MCU going forward. In the comics, it's a location in the Florida Everglades, where parallel worlds sometime intersect, and it's commonly associated with the bizarre character known as Man-Thing, who acts as its guardian. The Crossroads was also referenced on the chalkboard, the Crossroads being a gateway dimension through which other worlds can be accessed. Finally, there was a reference to the Fault, which could definitely become important in the franchise. It's a rip in the very fabric of the universe, which served as a gateway to a twisted alternate dimension known as the Cancerverse. Rips are generally caused by significant cosmic events, and events of that nature don't really come more significant than Thanos' snap. Just saying. Now, if we assume Selvig's notes are correct, which given how accurate the real-world science notes on his chalkboard were, we should assume they are. A lot of major Marvel multiverse ideas were established as parts of the MCU's lore in this scene. Later in 2017's Thor Ragnarok, a new element was added to this, albeit one that was a lot less specific, as the movie confirmed the existence of the aforementioned cosmic being known as the Man-Thing. According to Marvel Studios head honcho Kevin Feige, Thor Ragnarok's biggest and best Easter eggs could be found on the side of the Grandmaster's tower, on Sakaar. You see, the tower was emblazoned with carvings of the Grandmaster's previous gladiatorial champions, and one of them was indeed the Man-Thing. The Man-Thing was created in a joint effort between Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, Gary Conway, and Gray Morrow back in 1971. His real name is Dr. Theodore Ted Sallis, a scientist who was attempting to recreate the super soldier serum that granted Captain America his extraordinary abilities. But his efforts resulted in him being pursued by the evil organization known as AIM. Rather than allow the sole sample of the formula to fall into the hands of the technological terrorist group, Sallis injected himself with it and fled into a nearby swamp. Unfortunately, and indeed unexpectedly, the serum left him vulnerable to mystic energies that surrounded the Everglades, and he was transformed into the monstrous Man-Thing. The substance of his body was eaten away, and he became a slow-moving being made entirely of plant matter. And although he does retain a semblance of humanity, the truth is he's now a whole new life form. He would later become guardian of the nexus of all realities, the breach in the fabric of time and space that binds all the various dimensions together, and one of the many things scribbled by Erik Selvig on that chalkboard in Thor: The Dark World. You see, it really is all connected. Thor Ragnarok not only made it clear that the MCU's version of the character looked like his classic comic book counterpart, but the fact he had made it to Sakaar would also suggest he was able to traverse space by accessing something similar to the nexus of all realities. You know, given that getting to Sakaar seemed to otherwise require going through a wormhole. It's pretty clear that Marvel Studios has committed wholeheartedly to the idea of the multiverse in the last few years, even if they haven't handled it in quite the same way as the comics. The MCU imagines a scenario where there are entirely different planes of reality, planes that are generally beyond the reach of three-dimensional beings by conventional means. In fact, sorcerers like Doctor Strange, the Ancient One, and Caecilius have been shown to borrow power from these other dimensions, using it to do things as complex as reshaping the very fabric of reality itself. With training, they can also learn to access some of these dimensions, whether that be physically or in their astral form. And the multiverse was first explored in detail in that Doctor Strange scene that saw the Ancient One send the titular character on a sort of magical mystery tour. You remember the one when Benedict Cumberbatch's character tumbled through countless different dimensions whilst wondering what the heck was going on. That being said, the MCU had really only explored two other key dimensions in depth, the aforementioned Dark Dimension and the Quantum Realm. The Dark Dimension is a strange and hostile universe ruled by the malevolent extra-dimensional entity known as Dormammu.
Dormammu? I've come to bargain.
Time works differently in the Dark Dimension. Dormammu's very being appears to be infused with the dimension itself, burning with a hunger to consume other planes of reality and absorb them into himself. Thankfully, as far as Earth is concerned, Doctor Strange entered the Dark Dimension armed with the Time Stone, and used Dormammu's inability to deal with the concept of time to make him swear to never interfere with Earth again. The Quantum Realm, however, is actually rooted in real-world theoretical science. According to the laws of quantum mechanics, if an object or living being is shrunk to subatomic size, it would enter a state where the laws of science, such as gravity and time, would cease to apply. In the MCU, that is the Quantum Realm, a place outside space and time that was introduced in the first Ant-Man movie in 2015, and that was further explored in 2018's Ant-Man and the Wasp, when Michael Douglas's Hank Pym attempted to rescue Michelle Pfeiffer's Janet Van Dyne from there. The Quantum Realm also appears to have a sort of geography to it, different levels, so to speak, in a sense that the deeper you go into it, the more the traditional laws of science seem to break down. There have, of course, been a bunch of other references to the multiverse concept in the wider MCU as well. In Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, the movie opened with the titular team dealing with a creature called the Obelisk, which can move from one dimension to another at will. Also, in the fourth season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it was revealed that the Ghost Rider is an interdimensional creature from a hell-like plane of existence. The following season in the same show, the titular agents found themselves plagued by the dimension of dreams, suffering from nightmarish hallucinations as a result of that, and the fact that Nico Minoru's Staff of One draws its abilities from the Dark Dimension in Runaways. Knowing what we already knew about Avengers Endgame, and bearing in mind everything we've said in this video, there's no doubt that the multiverse will play an incredibly important part in the MCU going forward, and the Quantum Realm appears to be the key to that. When Marvel Studios first designed their Quantum Realm, they worked closely with Dr. Spiros Mikalakis, a quantum physicist who found the whole thing extremely exciting and thrilling. Dr. Dr. Michalakis said this is exciting for the future. There are different ways that some of these ideas appear on screen in a few years. Not just for Ant-Man, but also for Captain Marvel and all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And more recently, Hank Pym actor Michael Douglas agreed, saying the quantum realm plays an important part in all the next chapters, I think, of the Marvel films. In the upcoming Captain Marvel movie, the quantum realm is expected to be revealed as one of the sources of Carol Danvers' powers, potentially explaining Samuel L. Jackson's revelation that Brie Larson's character can travel through time. And it's widely believed that Avengers Endgame is in itself a time travel story, with the Avengers using the quantum realm to travel through time in an attempt to either prevent or undo Thanos' snap from Avengers Infinity War. In terms of quantum theory, access to a subatomic dimension like the quantum realm could indeed allow that to happen. And given that Janet Van Dyne revealed in Ant-Man and the Wasp that there are time vortexes in the quantum realm, that already pretty much explains how that's going to happen. Tie-in merchandise such as toy lines have shown the Avengers wearing new white costumes that are undoubtedly similar to Hank Pym's quantum realm environmental suit, which appears to be how the heroes of the MCU will safely explore the subatomic realm. Beyond Captain Marvel and Avengers Endgame, the likes of Doctor Strange 2 and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 are also in the works, so it's probably safe to assume the multiverse will be further explored in those two movies. TV shows like Runaways and Cloak and Dagger should also continue to explore the same concept. The mysterious mystical corruption Nico Minoru suffered while using the Staff of One has yet to be explained, and there's even speculation that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6 could feature an alternate reality version of Bill Coulson. The multiverse is definitely in the MCU to stay, and it's all thanks to its introduction in the first two Thor movies. So, what do you think? Did you realize the Thor movies introduced the idea of the multiverse to the MCU before any other installments in the franchise? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to ScreenRant for more great videos just like this one. Bye for now!